Companion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wells. I am a producer here at The Companion. Welcome to Embracing Mental Health as a Fandom. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it right now before I introduce these people right here above me. But this is a mission we at The Companion have been on for over a year now. It's spearheaded by Amanda Tapping and all you Stargate fans out there. And now we're expanding to Trek with Michelle Hurd, Jen Maley, and our very special guest today. The series has come in the form of live stream events, small group green rooms, meditation classes, and now into the physical world with our first book, an enamel pen set. It's been an amazing journey, and I can't wait to continue it with you all today. First, let me introduce my co-host for this event, the co-founder of The Companion, Lawrence Cal. Hi, Lawrence.
Hello there.
And I'm so sorry, everyone. Can you say something again? Everyone out there, I've been having sound issues like literally the entire week. I think I can hear it now. We're good. Sorry about that. But our guest today's list of character credits include a redneck, an EMT and paramedic, mom, conservative news host. You can find her in Doom Patrol as Hammerhead and even in an episode of Young Rock as China. But likely those of you here with us today know her from the critically acclaimed and nostalgia-inducing Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, playing Bridge Officer Lieutenant Tavine. Hello and welcome to Stephanie Czajkowski. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. I just got I was like, oh, hi.
Wells, are you not playing the crowd music? Where's the sound effects going?
All the things. You know how much sound issue. Hold on. There we go. Let's do some applause.
Let's do it. There it is. Yeah.
There it is. Oh, it's gonna loop now too. So before we go any further, and this is really funny after all of my flubs that just happened, but before we go any further, since we will be talking about, among other things, mental health, it is important to stress that none of us here is a mental health professional. So if you do find yourself in crisis, please seek help. And if you are in need of some resources, you can visit thecompanion.app/mental health for a list of pretty much global resources wherever you are. So please seek any assistance that you may need, but hopefully we'll have some good light conversation, some laughs to be had today as well. Already, hopefully everyone's laughing on at my expense at this point. So,
well, you are laughing yourself, so we're laughing with you, not laughing at you.
There we go.
Stephanie, I understand, according to things that I've read up about you, that the Brady Bunch was what made you want to pursue a career in acting.
Yes, that is true.
Why the Brady Bunch?
I think it's reportedly my mom was like, I always wanted to do it. Like I was always performing as a small child. But when I turned 5, I saw the Brady Bunch when I would come home from kindergarten in syndication. And I think the thing about it was it was a family, so I knew I couldn't be on it. But when they introduced Cousin Oliver, I was like, oh, there can be other kids on this. And I made her send a letter to the local ABC affiliate station to ask if I could be on it. And it had been off for easily a decade and a half. But they actually did send a letter back and say, well, if you want to do this, then you should, get into modeling and acting. And I kind of went from there. But yeah, that was a semi-inciting incident for sure.
I love it. So did you start shortly after that before, when did you start acting, getting into that?
It was junior high and high school, just doing summer plays. I grew up in southern Wisconsin, and there wasn't really in an industrial town called Racine, and there wasn't really a lot of opportunity to do that kind of thing. And also, I don't come from a family that is in the entertainment industry at all. So when I was 12, we moved to Naperville, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and they had summer theater. And prior to that, I had gone to a small Catholic school, and somewhere along the line, started writing plays instead of doing reports. Like I had to do a report about Louis Pasteur, and instead I wrote a play about him, and we performed it. The nuns were nice enough to let me perform it in school. So it was encouraged a little bit, but there was no real outlet for it being like a legitimate thing. And then I moved to Naperville and started doing summer plays. And once I got to high school, we had a pretty robust, because it was a big high school. We had a robust theater program, but I knew I always wanted to do it. And I saw friends of mine, or at least other students, who literally left school and went to the children's professional school, like the Fame in Chicago. And my mother was just insistent upon, I think, A, because she didn't know how to be a stage mom.
Mm.
And B, she basically was like, well, this is your choice. And if you decide to make it your choice, then it'll be your choice. And so it started there. And then I ended up going to NYU for college because it was my aunt lived in Chicago, and her friend was Daryl Hannah's mom. And Daryl Hannah's mom, Sue Wexler, who I'm like, thank you for guiding me. Because again, we had no idea what to do. And she told me that I should go to college and either go to NYU, Yale, or Northwestern. So I tried to get into all of those. I didn't realize that there's a difference between the undergrad and the grad program, but I auditioned for NYU on Valentine's Day, my senior year. And literally when I left, the man who auditioned me said, okay, well, we'll see you in the fall. And that was kind of it. And the rest of it has been figuring it the hell out, because I meet people who've been in it, or it's like a family business. And I think when you come from a place that you're like, oh my God, this is my dream, there's a lot of times there's so much, it's held so with so much reverence that it almost makes you afraid to just screw up and try it, or not realize that it is an industry, it is work. And I think when I started changing my perspective is when I was better at getting jobs, just because it wasn't so precious, I guess.
So can I follow up on that?
Sure.
So you're saying, I guess when you were applying for NYU, that like was that the moment that kind of became like the dream come true, or could you?
I think it was the thing that was like, oh, this will explain to me how I get work in this industry, right? Because I didn't comprehend the fact that this industry, unlike other industries, unlike our school system, is not this linear thing. You do the thing and you do the thing and you get the A's and you get the job. It's not how it works. So it was one step, because I came from that background, and I think a lot of people do come from this idea that if you do the right thing, that it will equate to getting to the place you want to go. And that's just not how it happens. There's so little control you have so little control over so many aspects. And the only aspects you have control over are what you do, like what you do and give to the character. And maybe you're great. And I've known people who are some of the most phenomenal actors I've ever seen in my entire life, but aren't good at auditioning, or that, you know what I mean? And there's always these things that sometimes there is a lot of luck and talent. It's a coming together of so many things, I think, to create a career,
Yeah, the reason why I asked a terrible question and I didn't even follow through with the question is because, we've had these conversations in the past, whether it's with members or other actors and showrunners and writers. It's like when you're on the other side as a fan or as a child, it almost feels like, at least for me personally, like magical. Like, how do you get onto a big screen that millions of people can see? And then, oftentimes, and this doesn't have to be with writing or acting or the arts, but, there's this almost like society tells you there's this rule book. And if you can master this rule book, you'll become successful, or you'll achieve things.
Absolutely.
And you sort of like follow the rule book sometimes. And then you get to the moment of like, well, I've done it. Now what? And it's like, oh, hold on. It's not a given, or it's not, a standard path. There is no standard path. And then you start to question, who told us this standard path? Like, where did this come from, or why did this idea come about? And then you're sort of now, like, I guess at another inflection point, right, where you're graduating and you're hoping the information is coming to you, or the key, the door opens, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, like, see you later, 200 more kids coming in this year, you know.
I find that there was, and I've read interviews with like Edie Falco specifically. There is a mindset for some people, and this is not everybody, who go to conservatory acting programs, at least at the age that I did when I was 17, because I was like, you know how to do it. Tell me what I need to do. Like, it was so and it's also how actors are taken advantage of, is everybody just wants to know the secret. They want to work so hard, and they want the thing. And sometimes the thing, there isn't a thing. Sometimes the thing is just, it's your time. You know, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. And I remember I had a friend who was a manager at one point tell another friend of mine, so it was like a grapevine thing, in confidence, that she said that I would have a hard time working because I was too big. And meaning I was tall, and I'm 5'10", and I'm muscular, and women, at least for a very long time, who were that tall had to be a certain, you know, there's a body image thing that goes along with it. And I'm not heavy by any stretch of the imagination, but I am not super, super skinny. Like, and I know that. And I remember meeting for the first time, doing a summer program, and meeting an actress who's been very successful in film and television, and literally being like, oh, that's what TV people look like. Because for a very long time, who was on our screens was a very specific thing. And, you know, streaming has allowed that, in sci-fi and genre has allowed that to expand, which has been phenomenal, because for a very long time, and also the people who are telling our stories have changed. So we're not seeing it through only one purview, you know?
It's interesting the way you put that, with the, you know, seeing a very successful TV actress and like, oh, that's what it's almost like. It feels really similar to like identity conversations you have in general about yourself and like other people. Like, oh, I can't do that because that's what I'm supposed to look like.
Or I mean, because you want to see, like, I heard Michelle was talking about, Michelle was talking about, you know, DiversityCon, and just talking about, you know, when you see yourself. And I mean, when I saw, there are a few women who are tall and are strong. Like, I remember seeing Kristen Johnston, who is not that much older than me, finally on television, and seeing examples of what you can be. Because while, you know, predominantly film and television has been very white, it has been very, you know, cis identifying, and it's always through a certain purview. And then when you go and then you break it down into, you know, gender identities, then it's, and this is still happening. You have scripts that are, you know, the cast is 7 people, and 2 of them are female or are non-binary identity. Like, and then what they'll do is they'll double down and be like, okay, so they're going to be non-binary, but we'll also make them, you know, African American, because for some reason you can't expand that world. And that's really disheartening, in the sense that I'm always just like, you know, females have been raised to, and specifically I feel like white females, because I don't see this amongst my Black and Hispanic friends, to tear one another down because there's only one spot. And the idea of bringing everybody up, and I think we're seeing this with other generations of women and people who identify as non-binary, people actually supporting one another, as opposed to just feeling like there's not enough room.
For sure.
As I just drive it off the track. I don't even know.
No.
Well, thanks for the live stream.
Thanks. No, that's it. No, I actually, no, it's all, that all brings up, it's kind of continuing that thought of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to look like or not supposed to look like. We're only allowed this many pieces of the pie, you know, instead of, and then you're going through this process on a weekly basis as a working actor of, audition process, audition, over and over again. First of all, I would love to know, like, I think people out there don't realize what maybe a typical week of that feels like,
Yeah.
for a working actor. So I'd love to know that. And also on top of that, it the stresses that come with that and the like insecurity and everything. How do you personally deal with that, on a mental health level?
Sometimes not very well.
Fair,
I
fair.
mean, and so I have been fortunate to work pretty consistently, especially over the last couple of years. But even still, I know people, and it's changed. It has changed dramatically because I've had friends, again, the aforementioned, actress who I think is phenomenal, Jennifer Morrison, who was on House,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I met her at we did Steppenwolf's boot camp intensive, and I remember just being like, "You're so amazing," and because she's smart and wonderful and like has this look that you're like, "Oh my god, I've seen you," and then you keep seeing her on screen, and
Mhm.
she works all the time, and now she's directing, and she's doing amazing, amazing things. And I remember having a conversation at a later date about, you know, there were people who would have like several auditions a day, and that has never been my thing. Because I've always been a very specific type. There'll be weeks where sometimes I'll have like I remember having like 3 auditions in a day and being like, "Oh my god," because it's not regular for me because of what I tend to go out for and because of my stature and when I had hair, what television was seeing me as, really. So it's always been a balance of, and even still, I'm a fitness instructor. I teach. I used to bartend. So it would be you get an audition in between work. You have to sub out work, learn your stuff, rehearse it, hopefully coach if you can, then figure out how to drive there and do it and then come back and then go to work again. And so it's kind of fitting it all in while you're trying to make a living. If you're lucky enough to keep working and have jobs, I had a teacher once tell us that the reason that we get paid so much is because we do all this work and we don't get paid for it. And the only reason to keep doing it is because when you do get a job, you get paid very well. And it's the hope that keeps going, but it's also, residuals, et cetera, are the things that sustain you through these long periods because, I mean, since the strike, my last job was Young Rock, and that was a year, almost a year after I shot my last episode of Doom Patrol. And
Yeah.
while it comes out and looks like you're working all the time, you're like, even on Picard, like it was 10 and it would be like a week and then I'd be off for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? It's not like going to a 9 to 5 job. So it's figuring out what you do in between. It's figuring out, it's auditioning for other stuff in between as well. And, and trying to be as smart about it as you can. I mean, because I try to remind myself that what people don't often realize, and I remember my grandmother being like, "They should have given you more lines," when I had like a 2-line role on, I think, Supergirl or something.
Mhm.
And sometimes you forget as well when you've been able to do a little bit more as an actor because you want to do so much is, they put out a role for security guard, male and female, ages 30 to 50. And they get probably 6 to 10,000 submissions for that
Mhm.
one role. And then they go through and you get an audition, which you're lucky to be invited to the party. You're lucky enough. And then maybe you audition and maybe you get pinned or they ask about your avail. And at that point, you're like, there's nothing else you can do. And then they send it up the stream of 8 or 9 other people who get to decide, who aren't necessarily a director or the producer or the casting director, get to decide who's going to get this job. And it can still fall like it, and you can still not get it at the end because you may look to the way that they've built the cast, you don't quite fit in, or the way, or you remind somebody of somebody, and and that turns them off. So the only thing you can do is try to make that person as human as possible. Be happy with the work, because the audition's the job, and just move on. Because the more you sit in it or judge yourself for, like, by telling yourself that the reason you didn't get the job because you weren't good enough is just going to beat your mental health. It is going to destroy your self-confidence. And, and it's a hard thing hearing no. It's a really hard thing. It doesn't necessarily get easier, because also as you start to build a career, then you have bigger opportunities, and then the disappointment can be even bigger sometimes.
Yeah, can I explore that a little bit?
Yeah.
This idea of, I guess, resilience, and also, do you take it personally? So I guess I'm gonna, through the lens of the companion, right? We first started the company. It was a startup. It's the Silicon Valley type thing. We're pitching angel investors, then pre-seed investors, right? And they always say, you kind of have a 1 in 100 shot. So make sure, if you want to have 2 investors or 3 investors, speak to 200 or 300 firms. And so first of all, you're like, well, how do you get to 200 to 300 firms? Like, I didn't even know there were 200 to 300. Anyway, and then they tell you no for some benign reason.
Right.
And I always take it so personally, like even to this day. And I've pitched hundreds of times. And it was interesting when you were saying, like, every time you hear no, it hurts. I would love to hear more. I mean, I don't want to necessarily open up those wounds for you, but it's I kind of empathize with that, and I'm wondering, do you take it personally?
Well.
Yeah, and Wells, and we've talked
my
about
film
this
festival submissions and everything that I have going on. Like, it's the same,
right? And it's your art that's being submitted, and it's like, nope, next one,
Right.
And
well, that's I mean, that's the hard part about it. I think for me, one of the best, and I come back and forth on this, because when I was, my biggest stretch of booking was when I ended up shaving my head because I went through chemo and I had cancer, and I booked like nobody else. And I think it's because I just didn't care. It became less precious. And if I didn't get the job, it didn't matter, because I was focusing. I had something so much bigger to focus on, like, being alive. Being alive. But my partner is a writer director, and he had the opportunity to direct his first feature. And I will remember, I sat on the other side of that casting process, and what you realize, and then you forget as an actor, because you just want to work. And sometimes there's a role that you're like, oh my God, I can so see myself doing it. And you give a version, and then you're like, damn it. And then you watch it, and maybe, and not always. If the more you do this, I feel like you have to build up that place of recognizing that it is not necessarily you. Because when we were auditioning for that feature that he did, we saw a bunch of actors, and sometimes it was just, there was an actor who we found a role for, because I was like, she is so good, and why can't we turn this role into a female role? But because sometimes you just think they're great, they're just not in your brain what you see them as. Like, we read books all the time, right? And when you read a book and then they turn it into a movie, people are disappointed, because in your mind, this character is one way, and then it's how they look at it, or how a filmmaker makes it, is so vastly different, because we all bring our own perspective to it. So different losing different jobs, or not being called for different jobs, I think for me, they feel personal when it feels like the work I did was really good. When I feel like, because there's certain ones that I'm like, it was all right. Like, we didn't have enough time, or like, because you're also just like, I have 24 hours. Like, but if you feel like, you really put your heart and soul into it, and they just went a different way, or you didn't hear any feedback at all, those are I think the harder bumps to get over. And they're not all the time, but sometimes, it is. And there's also just the hope of, in my estimation, there's nothing better than working. Like, that's my favorite place to be, is working, And so a lot of times you're just like, I just want a job. Please just give me a job.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic you were saying how almost like when, you were going through treatment and almost like not caring allowed you to book more jobs. And then, sometimes roles you really care about and you put a lot of yourself into and you don't get it, and you take it personally. Is it, I ask this to myself all the time, like, should I care or not care? Because you don't want to open yourself up to that vulnerability. But if you don't care, maybe it doesn't mean as much. I don't know if you have a perspective on that.
Well, I think it's, if you don't, I think there's a difference. Like, if you don't give a shit, that's one thing. If it's something you can care about, but also just let go, I think it's the holding on, right? And I think that is true in relationships. It's true in friendships. It's true in interaction. It's the holding on to a result that you want that doesn't necessarily actually, it isn't, for some reason in the universe, it's not supposed to turn out that way, right? My mother was very much kind of a believer in let go, let God. Like, the universe will take care of you if you're riding the wave or whatever. And sometimes it got a little woo-woo, but I think there is something true about being like, this is what I want to happen, but also life is this kind of majestical roller coaster that if you remain present, I feel like if you remain present and available, you will, and again, it does sound woo-woo, but I believe this, you will attract what you're supposed to, experience in this lifetime.
Yeah. It's like that letting go of that vice grip on whatever you're
trying to control it.
Yeah.
Trying to control it. Because in your mind, you're like, if I know from step to step to step how it's going to be, this will be this way. And sometimes it ends up better than you thought.
Correct. I was just thinking in like the times that some curveball was thrown during production of my feature film or something, and then having to come up with the creative solution. And then by the end being like, well, this is even better than what we were going to do before. And it's like, if you hadn't just let go, then you never would have even gotten to that point, Yeah.
It's the best laid plans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say that through most of my life, I had a lot of anxiety and literally just wanting to control things. And there's one thing that, I think COVID did it to a lot of people. And I remember when COVID came and everyone suddenly couldn't do things, and just watching people and how they reacted. And I identified it as being, I already went through this with cancer. Like, I was like, I know what having no control feels like. I actually know this. And so it's a slightly more familiar to be like, I don't know, what the fuck's going to happen? I don't know. We'll figure it out, I guess, because we can't change it. Yep. So we can just deal with it in the best way we can at the time.
Yeah. I think it's really a great perspective to think about and to keep in mind.
It's hard. Everybody. It's hard though, dude. It's
super hard.
Yeah.
So kind of speaking of auditions, control, your mom's advice and everything, when you were, Wells and I were researching your background and watch your interviews, and your mom, your parents both are into Star Trek. And as you're auditioning for a role for this amazing franchise, long-standing franchise, I guess, did you have that, like, really want the role, the control? How was that process like? I don't know if you can describe that.
It was not the same. It was a very fast process, because they had decided that they were going to do, because we were still in COVID protocols, and they had, and I think it might have probably been cheaper just because they could do one back to back. And so Terry had been writing. And so it was such a fast turnaround. I had come back from working on another project. I had gotten the audition on a Wednesday and it was due Friday morning, but they're like, get it in as soon as you can. So I got it in the next day. And then by Friday I knew. And when they send it to you, they don't tell you what it is. All the Star Wars projects, all the Star Trek projects, they always have a code name. And they'll have, I can't remember what the name of the character was off the top of my head. But there's, a code, like, and it said it was a science officer. So I was like, I think this is Picard.
I was about to say, did you have any guesses? You have like an idea?
Well, because what you can do is you can look up the casting director who's writing, like, whatever information you get. I always am a super nerd, and I look up as much as I can to find out as much as I can about the project I'm working for.
Control.
Yeah, well, control and also information.
Yeah.
Because if you know what shows they've done before, the tone of them, especially if it's not a show on air, you can get an idea of maybe, especially if you're doing a self-tape and you're not in the room, what the tone of it is. And so you do that research, and I realized that it was Picard. And I think part of the fact that you had to get it done fast, when it's faster, like my last, I think 4 jobs, literally my last 3 jobs my last 4 big jobs, have turned around in like a day. It's been like, I auditioned the next day. Okay, you got it. Like, it's been that fast because they've been slightly under pressure. And because that happens, you're like, all right, well, this is what I got to give. And either they're going to like it or not. So you can kind of just let go and let God, because you're just like, this is the best I could do in the amount of time I had. If they like it, great. Yeah. And it just worked out. And then when I got it, and then I went to set, and then I met Terry, and then I stepped on the bridge, of the ship. I was like, can I swear? I was like,
yeah.
I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah. Like, by the time I got there, then it was like, and then there's nerves about, there's always nerves about, like, oh God, I'm acting with Jonathan Frakes and Patrick Stewart. Don't fuck up. You have these crazy lines that make no sense. They're all science babble. Don't fuck them up. Like, you've been up since 3:30 in the morning. Don't screw it. Like, there was a lot of anxiety when it came to that, because especially when you're I think a smaller role, you feel like it has to be one and done. You have to, and it's true. And the way we were shooting, because there was one day where I was just like, I was saying the right word, but I was like, it just felt like I couldn't get it, and I couldn't get them right, and it turned out fine. But you beat yourself up because you want to be perfect. You want to be good, and and I gave myself such shame for. There was one episode, I can't remember, and there was a lot of technobabble, and it was, again, I had gotten up at 3:00 in the morning. It was a very long day, and I was getting it right, but there was like one word, and then you start to doubt yourself, and then you go into this weird spiral, and then you feel terrible, and you never want to go back because you think everyone hates you. Like, it just can go like, whoa. And I've had that a couple of times. I had one episode of Trek that we did, and the thing about it is, if you have to go back, you have to figure out how the fuck to get out of it. You can't stay there. I did that. I did that happened to me in an episode of Grey's Anatomy. I had this speech at the top, and I knew it, but I had a cold, and I was on cold medicine, and I was nervous, and it shook my confidence, got shook. And you're in it, and everyone's being super nice to you, but you're still inside being like, be better, you suck. Like, you're just telling yourself, and it was fine. It turned out fine. But in the moment, you just can beat yourself up so much more than anyone else can in certain respects. And it's such wasted energy. But, you want to do a good job. And and that's like, for me, after that happened the first time, I was like, oh, like, it's me being like, okay, well, what do you do to deal with that? What do you deal with, when it comes to like for a minute, I was like, oh, I can't memorize dialogue. I can't memorize things. And then you start to doubt your ability, which then goes on and because for me, post-cancer, there is a thing called chemo brain, where my brain will be like, like, not fully out, but like, things don't come as fast as they used to. And so I have to work harder at it. but then it's also some things come really natural. Like, and I think that's true for dialogue in general. But I used to be someone who could just be like, dialogue, no problem. And it's a little bit of a struggle. Not a struggle, it's harder.
Yeah.
It's harder than it used to be. Or I can get it and paraphrase it. So if I'm trying to do word perfect, I'll overthink it and get really scared about the fact that I dropped a word. Like, it's just, and I think a lot of actors put that kind of pressure on themselves as well.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that I know that I need to get over still.
It's like the acting version of what's it in sports, the yips or whatever they call it. Like it's
the
that.
yips.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the yips. And if you let them spiral out of control, they will fully fuck you up. They will fully fuck you up.
Are there any...
I think the best thing that came from that is like I saw the yips and I was just like, and then I went and I was like, do other people have problems with it? Like, why am I not sticking this dialogue? And then I found out that Kate Mulgrew literally went through and read Denise and Michael's handbook to Star Trek because she was having a really hard time with technobabble. Is hard. I can do medical babble because I've been a doctor so much, but technobabble is really hard. And then I read articles and interviews with people who just like write notes for themselves, and I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who's having a hard time with this. It gives me so much more respect, in particular for Brent Spiner, for all the like technobat, like the miles and miles of monologues that he's had to do.
It's so true.
Yeah. But it's also made me realize, like, for stuff like that, how I need to approach it. So it becomes more in it. Like, I'm somebody, because I come from theater, I need to get the words in my body. Like, I just need to not rehearse them over and over, but just have them be organically a part of me. So that ends up being a longer process of kind of imbuing them somewhere in my psyche without them being a flat read, which sometimes on TV you don't have time for. Sometimes they just throw you a line and you mimic it back like a meat puppet, and you just move on. Right. You don't take it personally, you just move on.
For sure. So when you and I talked about doing this live stream, we've a huge topic that came up was chronic illness. And you've mentioned it a few times already as we've had this conversation. But you've dealt with plenty of your own share. I read you've battled 3 different unrelated types of cancer.
Yeah. Like, when I do things, I do them big.
you go big. Yeah. What's the timeline on that? When did all of that start? And, obviously how getting into how it affected your career and everything like that. But what is your timeline for all of this?
So my father, my roommate from college, and my uncle passed away in 2017, like in succession. It was just like, they say things happen in threes, and I'm like, oh, they do. Which was all pretty sudden. And my father passed away from a massive heart attack. And while I had no indication that I had any heart issues, my brothers and I made a choice to be like, hey, we should all just make sure our hearts are okay. Mm-hmm. I'm a fitness instructor, so I was like, I don't think it's going to really be an issue, but right now I have union health insurance. And when you go on and off, welcome to America. When you go on and off good insurance, you're like, okay, I need to get all the things done.
Get the full checkup this
time.
Exactly.
So I got a calcium scan for my heart, which came back great. But while they were doing the CAT scan MRI, it was that. And then I was also having like some weird finger stuff. And so we did an MRI on my neck, and it was fine. Like, it was degenerative discs, and because I teach fitness or whatever. And they saw a really small tumor on my thyroid. And so I went, I had it biopsied, and it was early in 2018. It was probably February. I found out. This is why you always take someone with you. I went to see the endocrinologist, and she's like, so it is cancerous. It's papillary thyroid cancer, but it's like a baby cancer. Like, they'll just probably cut it out or cut half of it out. So in my head, I'm like, it's a baby cancer. No big deal. And she gave me a referral to a surgeon. And I went to Canada, and I shot a big Christian movie with Chrissy Metz, and like came back and went to this doctor's appointment, and brought my husband this time. And the endocrinologist is like, oh yeah, dude, like you have Hashimoto's and you have this. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, they're like, we're gonna cut my scar, we're gonna, cut your thyroid out, which I did not want to do. She was like, or we can watch and wait. And she's like, and I think it's gone to one of the other lymph nodes. And I was like, can we just watch it? And my husband's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, look, you can biopsy the lymph node. And if it comes back that it's spread, then we'll take it out. Because I was terrified of the idea of having my throat cut, of having my voice gone, of having of everything that could happen by them, screwing around near my vocal cords. I went to school for some musical theater. I used to say, like, I can sing, I haven't in a long time, and blah, blah, blah. But the idea of being in a profession where I relied on my voice, I was terrified.
Yeah.
Like, both physically and I think holistically and spiritually in life, that I would be silenced. And so that happened, and I was scheduled for surgery June 27th or 28th of 2018. And the week before I was supposed to go in, I was doing a self-tape. And I was wearing like a corsety bustier, like piratey outfit. And I lifted up and I was like pushing up my boobs kind of in like that like very not traditional, but stereotypical wenchy kind of look. And I lifted up my right breast and I felt this big lump underneath it.
Oh.
And I called my husband and I was like, hey, and the joke between us is always like, I was like, come here. And he's like, all right. And I was like, no, just feel this. He's like, okay. I'm like, no, feel it. So I went to see my primary care, and they were like, yeah, you need to have that checked out. And I was like, but I'm going in for surgery. And they're like, okay, we'll go to surgery and then have it checked out. So I went in for surgery that Thursday. That next Monday, I had a mammogram again, and I'd had a clean mammogram 6 months prior. They said everything was fine. I have dense breasts. So for any individuals with dense breasts, however you identify, be careful because x-rays don't necessarily give you the whole story. And then a week later, they did a biopsy. Well, they did an ultrasound. I think they did the mammogram and the ultrasound, and someone came in and was like, got very quiet.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, oh, fuck. They did I call it the quiet voice. The quiet voice that like telegraphs, oh shit, something's wrong. They're trying to be very calm. So we got the biopsy, and then the results came, and they thought it wasn't great. So they got the biopsy. The biopsy results came back the morning, 2 weeks after my thyroid surgery. I was having my follow-up, and I'm on my chart where they send you the information. So this alert comes. I was teaching a fitness class. I call my husband and I'm like, I need you to go into the computer and read this message. And I'm driving home. He's like, are you sure you want me to read you? I was like, just tell me. Because he's like, 80%'s nothing. But there's something about it that I was like, nah, I think this is what it is. And I figured they just cut it out and whatever. So I went back to the oncologist's office, my thyroid person. She was like, because everything's on my chart. She was like, what the fuck? Like, what happened? Because she can see what happened. And I was like, I know. And so I was very lucky because she was like, hey, what are you doing today? And I said, well, what I'm doing is I called my primary. I'm starting the process of referrals and everything to get through the system. And she said, hey, I share office space with the senior surgeon from the Revlon Breast Cancer Center at UCLA. She has the same office hours. If you can hang around, we can see if we can like sneak you in the schedule. And I was like, awesome. So we left, we got dinner, and it was like straight out of Grey's Anatomy where I was like, come up, see the doctor. She's looking at, she's like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, you have an old lady's cancer in a young lady's body. I was like, well, I've always held an old soul. And she's like, I'd like to do, mastectomy, maybe a double mastectomy and reconstruction. So we'd like you to meet the plastic surgeon. And then like 20 minutes later, he walked in. So like within a day,
that's why
I had the plan. And then I had to still go see my primary care, who, God love her, said, how are you doing with this emotionally? Would you like some medication? And I was like, I don't think so. She's like, maybe you should just have some Xanax just in case. And I'm like, okay. And then it was the process of double mastectomy, like a bunch of DNA testing. And I thought it would literally be like, next week we're going to do this. And it was 6 weeks later. But during that process, it turned out that it had traveled to my sentinel lymph node, which is basically the entryway to your lymphatic system. And so they opted to definitely do radiation. I opted for a double mastectomy because there was a 30% chance that it could come back in the other breast. And I was like, not really a boob lady, take them, it's fine. Not pregnant, not having babies, although that becomes the thing where they're like, are you going to have babies? Because if you do, you have to, and you're just like, I don't know. And we opted not to. We weren't really planning on it anyway. But what ended up happening was my radiation oncologist said, hey, you've had 2 cancers and they're not the same cancer. Maybe we should do a PET scan on you. And I said, that's probably a good idea. And they did. And they found a tiny little tumor on my kidney. That was the beginning of, and they did a biopsy. And it came back that it was a very rare, slow growing form of kidney cancer. It was called chromophobe. It was like a chromophobe kidney cancer. So basically the timeline was found out thyroid early 2018, had surgery June 2018, thyroid removal. August 2018, double mastectomy, chemo through the fall from October through February, biopsy for kidney cancer in December, radiation from March to April of 2019, little break, kidney resection. And then that's pretty much, that was like the big, 16-month, we call it the cancer train.
Oh my God.
Cancer train. And then it's just been kind of watch, wait. And I had a small reoccurrence in my hip. So they just changed my meds. And that was basically like, oh, we caught it early and now you're fine. Now we're just, I call it chronic cancer because it's that thing of if you've had enough of them, and they're mostly, I always think of my body and when my mother died of a rare cancer and I became kind of the spokesperson for our family to explain how it was working. And I'm like, it's kind of like a yard. It's like the weeds are growing up. You got to catch the weeds before they grow. If they pop up, you got to knock them down. And we knocked my weeds down. My weeds have been knocked down, which is good. Just because I'm on a better med that pretty much I just take until we hopefully find a cure. But my doctor, who is incredibly, incredibly good, is just like, yeah, you're going to live for like 20, 30 years. He's like, this is basically going to be like having diabetes for you. I'm like, so I have chronic cancer. That's super weird. Because it's weird to tell people that you have cancer or have had cancer or dealing with cancer because it's always through the lens of people's experience of it. Right. And what they expect of you or what they expect cancer to look like,
I'm sensing themes in your life as far as,
oh my God, right?
What people expect and how you present, and also how fast, like I'm thinking of your audition processes for some of these shows and how fast all of your cancer stuff happened. It's pretty wild how thematic all of that feels for you, but that's an incredible timeline. And I think just, it's amazing how much they were, how that was all able to be taken care of so efficiently for you too.
I got really lucky because I had really good doctors, but also that is not a traditional way to go about things. Like it's not a traditional way to go about things. I mean, both of my parents have passed away and my mother had a rare blood cancer. And so my motto, as are my brothers, is you don't let something languish. And I think that's part of the reason my battle with this has been very not different. It's just that you have no control over something, and a lot of times people don't want to know. And my I guess motto, is just I would rather know the real ugly. I want to know what I'm dealing with across the board, and this is also in life, because then I can make decisions with some sort of knowledge. And when it comes to like cancers, I'm like, my only power in this is to know as much as I can, And is to be as informed as I can and be as present as I can.
Yeah, Thank you for that. How are you
You're welcome.
feeling physically these days? Are you
I'm good. My new meds are so much better than my last ones. The side effects that apparently everyone has, I don't have, which is like, I'm just like, it's funny because my side, like even through chemo, it turned out that being a tall, strong Eastern European farm like was a really good body to have if you were going to go through multiple surgeries, chemos, and radiations. Like, I was able to tolerate it really well. I was tired sometimes, like, and cranky, but it did not make me super, super sick, and which is, I think, bad. Not bad, but some people, like, when I was going through chemo, I was still teaching fitness classes. And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, because I don't know how not to, and because it helps me. I know my body through that lens. I'm a really physical person. Now I know that I'm not as strong as I used to be because I lost a lot of muscle mass. The meds I'm on make me, have required me to actually get better rest, which also just happens when you become an adult who takes care of themselves. Like, it's really just forced me to take better care of myself instead of just being like, I'm strong, I can do anything always,
Do you find yourself did you, find yourself getting frustrated at limitations that, like, oh, I used to be able to do this and now I can't, or
not necessarily frustrated because there's nothing that I did before that I
that you
can't.
can't absolutely, yeah.
No. The main thing was more a case of, and this is like deep set, I think, body image with, physicality stuff. So I got bald. I became, the roles I was in were like strong, broad. My muscle. I don't lift as much as I used to. And physically, my body, when I'm like lifting weights and stuff, it takes longer to recover. And that can be frustrating because I'm like, I feel like I'm hobbling around, which also apparently comes with age. It's just all of those things got sped up by the fact that my body had all this trauma.
Gotcha.
So there's like, so I bruise a little easier, and I can still do the things. My recovery from the things is not nearly as fast.
So you have to give yourself a little more grace in all of that.
I have to give myself a lot more grace. But it's also changed how I teach. It's also changed how I teach fitness, because I'm just like, I've always been someone who was really aware of their body and strong, and I'd never been injured before. And I wasn't taking a body that was, I hadn't changed a body from being something that wasn't, that was my thing. I was always strong. When I had a double mastectomy, I think the biggest thing is like when you go to shut a car door, it hurt. And I remember being in Palm Springs and walking, and there was a homeless gentleman walking, or unhoused gentleman. I can't remember that was not very PC. Unhoused, gentleman who I think had a bit of mental illness and was kind of talking to himself. And it wasn't threatening, but I also was like, oh shit. If someone were to approach me and put their hands on me, previously I knew that I was physically capable, and I'm not right now. And that was a really hard thing to wrap my brain around. The fact that the thing that gave me that I was very self-confident was that I was physically capable. And suddenly I wasn't,
Yeah. As we're getting towards the end of our hour here.
I'm so sorry.
No, this is great. The comments are really lovely, by the way. There's a lot of people that are resonating a lot with what you're saying in the comments.
Good.
So, but I do want to bring it up a little bit for us by the end here. I do have a question for you from someone that I would like to play for you.
Okay.
And then we have a couple of questions for you as well that I'll let Laura answer one or ask one in particular, but I'm going to play this video one first. So, all right, let's take a look here if I can.
Hey Steph, it's Jen.
Hi.
I would love to know what life experience, if you had to pick one, do you feel like has allowed you to bring so much depth to your work?
The death of my mother. The death of my mother.
When So you said your father was
My father passed away in 2017.
so
My mom passed away in 2009.
okay.
She had a she had a rare blood cancer that she was diagnosed with when she was 53, and the internet was still semi-new as 2002. And I remember Googling this rare cancer on the computer, and it was like 8 in a million people had it. The average lifespan was 12 to 18 months. And there were 3 places you could be treated. And so I sent an email to Memorial Sloan Kettering, and by the grace of the universe, she ended up in a clinical trial that kept her alive for 7 years.
Wow.
But part of that is she was, for me, one of those mothers it was kind of Gilmore Girlies a little bit. She got a divorce from my father after 17 years of marriage when I was in my senior year of high school. I was 16. And my brother stayed with my dad, and I went with my mom. And I always thought of her as being weak because she did not embrace the world in the same way my dad did, which was like very masculine, like, you will do what I say, that kind of shit, that these kind of stereotypical attributes we assign to males and females in the world, these gender identities that like we get caught up in like these roles that we're supposed to take on. And there was something about her that she was so open, and she so unequivocally gave grace to everybody she met. And I remember when she left him, because it was just not good for her. And I remember being like, oh, and I realized now later, like, you always, if you look at your parents later, and I was like, I realized how hard that must have been, and how incredibly strong she was in this very quiet way that showed through love. So it taught me a lot.
Oh. You okay?
Oh, God. I mean, here's the thing. If anyone's lost anybody, this shit happens all the time.
Yeah.
There is no timeline for grief. And as I told someone in a cameo, because someone else said it somewhere, grief is just love with no place to go.
I feel like I heard that from someone else very recently, and it's such a wonderful thing to hear and to think about. Yeah.
I think it was Andrew. It was Spider-Man. It was Andrew. What's his face? Andrew?
Garfield?
Yes, it was Andrew Garfield, I think, who said it.
Really?
And somebody else said it. Yeah, like he said it talking about his mom or something. Yeah, but like a number of people have said it, and I have picked it up because I think it's a beautiful statement, because you're used to giving this thing, and now it doesn't have that home anymore.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you start spreading it around a little bit, I think.
Yeah. It's a wonderful way to look at it.
Yeah.
On that note,
I know. Sorry, I'm like, it's I was like, sorry, guys.
we're just gonna hard cut it on that note. No,
That's great. It's great.
No, it's wonderful, and it's a wonderful thing for people to think about and to keep in mind. We know we have quite a few of our members who've talked about their grief journeys with a lot of parents and even in other situations. So it's a wonderful thing to hear, and to hear that nobody's alone in all those thoughts, and
Nope.
but nobody's the same in their timeline either. So
No, they're not.
it's wonderful. How about we ask a fun question to wrap things up?
I was like,
no, I want to bring you up. I want to bring you up now.
I'll tell you what, we'll if we can quickly ask 2 questions, but the first one is, so Stephanie, we have this tradition where we like to ask the past guest, the next guest a question, but we don't know who it is necessarily. So you're kind of asking someone blind. Could you ask our next guest maybe a question that you've always wanted to know?
What would you tell? What advice would you have for your younger self?
Oh, lovely.
If you were talking to yourself as a 16-year-old kid, what would you tell yourself with the knowledge you have now?
Perfect.
Great. And one fun question. This is just always ongoing at the companion, which is if you could have a superpower, flight or invisibility, which would you choose?
Flight.
Exactly.
I like seeing people. I like going places. If I could, man, those transporters, man, I want to be beamed so many places, and they really need to get on that because I have friends I love all over the world. And if we could really get that done, I'd be like first to sign up for it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't love it, and you may find out at some point.
Well, just give us a little, like a little applause for Team Flight.
Okay, hold on. Let's give a
Are you
little
Team
applause
Invisibility?
for.
No.
I'm kidding. Yeah. Here you go.
Thank you. I'm Team Flight, and I think everyone else is Team Invisibility, as in just like everyone else. So
okay,
it's me against the world, and now Stephanie, it's me and you against.
There we go.
And so
yep, the comments are done. No, you've got a Team Flight comment in there. There you go. You're doing okay.
Yes.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. It's been an amazing and an amazingly quick feeling hour of conversation. So it's it always feels like it goes by way too fast. But thank you so much for being open and honest and sharing all of your stories. I just feel like it's just like a tiny scratch of the surface of a conversation with you at this point.
Well, Dead Mom starts at the end, and you're like, wait a minute. What?
Oh well, now we're gonna be here. No, I'm kidding. But thank you so much. Thank you also everyone who's out there watching right now. If you would like to come hang out with us at our social gathering, it is starting directly after this live stream. I have if you head over to, which one is it? It's one that I don't have on here. I really screwed this one up this time, Lawrence.
No.
But if you, it's in the comments below, or the description. It's the link to the social gathering. So please come join us there, and we will continue the conversation. Otherwise, everyone have a wonderful couple of weeks, and we'll see you all soonish. Maybe not in the next 2 weeks, but soon. Right, Lawrence?
Oh yeah, totally.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, we'll be at shore leave in 2 weeks, so it'll be after that.
You run that. I haven't been there yet. But.
You haven't been? Oh, I'm excited about it. It'll be a good time. But thank you so much, y'all. See you at social gathering if you're going to be there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.